In the heart of an ancient, sprawling forest, where towering pines reached toward the heavens and the soft murmur of rustling leaves provided nature's lullaby, a young bear cub named Milo frolicked with unbridled enthusiasm. The forest was his playground, a vast, sun-dappled sanctuary where the scent of fresh earth mingled with the sweet perfume of wildflowers. Every day promised an adventure, and every ray of sunlight seemed to dance in celebration of the life that pulsed through the glades and groves. One particularly warm afternoon, as the humidity hung lightly in the air and the forest basked in the golden glow of a late summer sun, an imperceptible disturbance began to unfold. In a secluded part of the woods, where the underbrush was thick and the ground was carpeted with dry, brittle leaves, a tiny spark ignited. No one noticed at first. The spark was as fleeting as a firefly, delicate and transient. But in the stillness of that moment, the seed of destruction had been sown. Milo, with his wide, curious eyes and sensitive ears, was the first to sense that something was amiss. While he chased the fluttering shadows of butterflies, a far-off, crackling sound pricked at his attention. It was a sound almost lost amidst the hum of the forest, yet it carried a hint of danger, a subtle, alarming disruption in the natural chorus of the wilderness. Drawn by a mix of innate curiosity and an emerging instinct for survival, Milo wandered cautiously toward the source of the unsettling noise. As he approached, the familiar scents of pine and damp earth were replaced by an acrid tang of smoke. The playful murmur of the forest fell into a tense silence as Milo discovered a scene of quiet chaos. In a small clearing, dry underbrush had caught flame, and a fiery tendril began to snake its way through the dry vegetation. The initial blaze was modest, merely a flickering orange burst against the backdrop of green, but it radiated an intensity that belied its small size. The flames licked hungrily at the dry grass, rapidly converting gentle heat into a burgeoning inferno. Panic stirred in the heart of every creature nearby as the realization dawned that this spark was the harbinger of something far more catastrophic. The normally tranquil forest, a place of secure familiarity, now brimmed with an undercurrent of trepidation and fear. For Milo, the sight was both mesmerizing and frightening. He watched, his heart pounding in his small chest, as the flames began to spread with an inexorable speed, fueled by the dry season's relentless heat. The shadows shifted abruptly as the inferno cast a dancing, unpredictable light upon the trees. In that moment, the fragile balance that had long defined his home seemed poised on the brink of collapse. Milo's instincts screamed at him to run, yet an inexplicable pull of curiosity rooted him momentarily in place. He could not fathom the full scope of the danger as the fire's glow intensified, transforming the once cozy glade into a cauldron of light and heat. It was clear that this was not just an isolated accident, it was the spark of destruction that threatened to engulf the entire forest. As the first wisps of smoke curled upward toward the clear blue sky, Milo's wide eyes mirrored a mix of wonder and horror. The gentle forest, which had been his world of safety and discovery, now teetered on the edge of calamity. In that crucible of impending disaster, the stage was set for an extraordinary journey, one that would test every fiber of his being, challenge the very notion of bravery, and ultimately reveal the strength that lay hidden in the heart of a tiny bear cub. Thus, the tranquility of the ancient forest was ruptured by the unassuming spark that ignited a wildfire, marking the beginning of a saga where innocence meets the unforgiving trial of nature, and where even the smallest soul is destined to confront the overwhelming forces of destruction. In the immediate wake of the tiny spark that had ignited the forest, chaos erupted like a tidal wave through the once tranquil woodland. The initial flicker of flame rapidly escalated into a roaring blaze, its fiery tendrils snaking through the dry underbrush and leaping from tree to tree. The crackling sound of burning wood filled the air, mingling with panicked cries from the forest's inhabitants. As the inferno grew, the once familiar rustling of leaves was drowned out by the overwhelming roar of fire and the frantic scurry of animals seeking escape. Milo, the young bear cub, found himself caught in the turbulent surge of panic. In the midst of the spreading flame, he became separated from his family. The comforting presence of his mother and siblings vanished in the whirlwind of smoke and noise. His wide, innocent eyes, filled with both wonder and terror, darted around as the world he had always known transformed into a maelstrom of fire and fear. The sight of burning trees and frantic animals left a deep impression on the cub, as every instinct screamed at him to run and hide. Yet, amid the chaos, something unexpected began to kindle within him, a stubborn spark of courage. As Milo navigated through the smoky haze, he witnessed numerous acts of bravery among the forest creatures. A steady-eyed deer led her fawn to a sheltered clearing, fending off the panicked mass that surged like a living tide. An old, scarred badger tunneled swiftly through the undergrowth to guide a small group of rabbits away from the inferno's path. Even a pair of fierce foxes, usually solitary by nature, worked together to distract a particularly menacing figure of a panicked cougar. Each act of valor, however small, left an indelible mark on young Milo's heart. Despite his youth and the lingering shock of separation, the bear cub found himself inspired by these displays of quiet heroism. The overwhelming fear that had threatened to paralyze him gradually gave way to a determination born of necessity and newfound resolve. Every step he took was tentative yet purposeful, as Milo sought not only to survive but also to understand what it truly meant to be brave in the face of nature's fury. Navigating through the labyrinth of smoke-filled clearings and tangled, burning undergrowth, Milo began to rely on his nascent instincts. His keen sense of smell helped him avoid the densest patches of flame, and the distant, echoing calls of a wise old owl guided his path away from the worst of the chaos. At one point, as the heat became almost unbearable, a gentle rustle in the charred leaves alerted him to the presence of a wounded hedgehog. In that moment of peril, the little creature looked up with pleading eyes, and Milo, without fully understanding why, felt compelled to help. Cradling the hedgehog in his tiny paws, he found a secluded nook beneath an outcropping of rock, a temporary haven from the raging inferno above. In that brief respite, as the sounds of destruction echoed distantly, Milo took a moment to catch his breath. He looked around the smoldering landscape, a world he once knew transformed by the ruthless fire. Despite the devastation, there was an undeniable undercurrent of hope. Even amidst the chaos, acts of kindness and solidarity shone through. It was here, in this small cocoon of safety, that Milo felt the stirrings of a profound realization. True courage, he was beginning to understand, was not the absence of fear but the determination to act against it even when the odds were stacked against him. With the hedgehog safely nestled by his side, Milo resolved to continue his journey through the burning forest. Each careful step forward was a defiant stand against the overwhelming force of the inferno. The world around him might have been ablaze, but within him was a growing flame of resolve, a belief that even in the heart of destruction, there could be moments of compassion, unity, and the embers of hope waiting to ignite a path towards salvation. Thus, in the midst of chaos and amid the ever-increasing fury of the forest fire, Milo began to truly embody a fledgling spirit of courage. His journey through the conflagration was no longer just a desperate scramble for survival, it was the first courageous act in a saga that would test his limits and ultimately reveal the depth of bravery that resided within his tiny, determined heart. In the dense, smoke-veiled aftermath of chaos, a profound stillness began to settle among the smoldering remains of the forest. Amid the crackle of cooling embers and the scent of singed pine, Milo the bear cub felt an inexplicable pull, a soft, insistent call rising from the very heart of nature. It was as if the wind itself whispered secrets of survival and renewal, urging him to leave behind the shattered familiarity of his once safe den. Driven by instinct and a newfound desire to understand the deeper rhythms of the wild, Milo embarked on a solitary quest, following this mysterious summons. As he trod carefully through ash-laden undergrowth, Milo encountered a wise old owl perched on a half-charred branch of a fallen tree. The owl's amber eyes, reflecting both ancient knowledge and silent sorrow for the devastation around them, seemed to pierce through the haze. In hushed, measured tones, more felt than heard, the creature conveyed that the flames were not only a force of destruction but also a catalyst for rebirth. The owl spoke of a time when the forest had endured great trials before, emerging stronger and more vibrant than ever. Each word resonated with Milo, affirming that within the chaos lay the promise of transformation. Inspired by this quiet wisdom, Milo pressed onward. The call of the wild grew louder with every cautious step. In a clearing where the heat had begun to subside, the young cub encountered a fleet-footed, aged wolf whose coat bore the marks of many seasons. With a gentle nod, the wolf communicated through soft gestures and subtle expressions that every living creature in the forest was bound by an unspoken duty, a shared responsibility to nurture life even in the darkest times. The wolf's silent encouragement fortified Milo's resolve, teaching him that bravery was not merely the absence of fear, but the ability to heed nature's call and act despite it. As the journey continued, the environment gradually shifted from a landscape of immediate danger to one of tentative promise. The flickering of distant, recovering fires illuminated pockets of unburned earth, hinting at nature's resilience. Along the way, Milo encountered other survivors, a timid rabbit seeking refuge under a protective boulder, a family of hedgehogs huddled together in a cool crevice, all of whom contributed their quiet strength to the chorus of the wild. Their presence, each a testament to endurance, deepened the cubs' understanding. The wilderness itself was a living entity, urging every creature to join in the struggle for renewal. Guided by the ethereal glow of the moon and the soft murmur of the night wind, Milo advanced further into the uncharted territory of the forest. Here, the boundaries between fear and hope blurred as he began to perceive the wild as both a vast challenge and a nurturing mentor. Every rustle in the underbrush and every distant call of an animal echoed the promise of a future where life could be reborn from the ashes. The call of the wild was no longer a distant, abstract sound, it had become an intrinsic part of his being, a guiding force that compelled him to explore, to learn, and ultimately, to grow. In that transformative journey through smoke and shadow, Milo discovered that the call of the wild was a summons to embrace the unknown, to trust in the enduring cycle of nature, and to awaken the dormant courage within his heart. With each determined step, the bear cub moved closer to a destiny that would not only reunite him with his kin but also unveil the true meaning of bravery, a quiet, resilient power born of hardship, hope, and an unyielding connection with the wild. The forest had transformed into a living battleground. With the flames now roaring uncontrollably and the air thick with choking smoke, Milo knew that survival depended on more than simply fleeing the blaze, it required taking a stand. In the heart of the inferno, as embers danced wildly against the darkening sky, the young cub resolved to face the fury head-on. Milo found himself at the edge of a devastated clearing, where the fire had reached its fiercest intensity. The heat was almost tangible, distorting the air and making the world around him shimmer in wavering mirages. Every crack of burning wood and every roar of the flames drove home the reality that the forest was fighting back. Yet, amidst this overwhelming chaos, Milo's small heart beat with an unwavering resolve, a determination to protect not only himself but also the fragile remnants of life struggling to survive. In a moment of clarity amidst the tumult, Milo remembered the guidance offered by the wise owl and gentle wolf. Their quiet, enduring strength had fueled his inner courage, and now it was time to act. Drawing on every ounce of instinct and resolve, he embarked on a daring mission to assist others caught in the inferno's relentless grip. With nimble steps and a cautious gaze, Milo navigated between towering, burning trees and across charred patches of earth, keeping close to the untouched, cooler areas where frightened animals had taken shelter. Everywhere he looked, the devastation was evident. Trees shuddered as they surrendered to the relentless heat, and the landscape groaned under the pressure of a fire that had grown too fierce to be controlled by nature alone. In a narrow gap between two blazing walls, Milo discovered a cluster of small animals, a family of field mice huddled together, trembling in fear, and a lone fawn shivering under the scant cover of a fallen log. Without a moment's hesitation, the bear cub approached them, his tender eyes conveying both reassurance and determination. Using his small yet determined frame, he guided them toward a safe path, clearing the way of burning debris by cautiously pushing aside fragile, smoldering branches. As he moved deeper into the fiery heart of the forest, Milo encountered obstacles that tested his every instinct. Overhead, the scorching heat turned the sky a furious red, while falling sparks sparked panic in his mind. At one critical juncture, an arch of charred vines formed a natural barrier between him and a route to safety. With his heart hammering, Milo assessed the situation and made a split-second decision. Summoning all his courage, he leapt through the gap, narrowly avoiding a cascade of hot embers. The adrenaline of the moment sharpened his senses, and his every movement became a calculated, instinctual act of defiance against the raging flames. Throughout this perilous journey, the forest seemed to test him repeatedly. The roar of the inferno was punctuated by sudden gusts of wind that threatened to sweep him off his feet and disorient his tiny form. Yet, Milo pressed on, driven by a burgeoning understanding that bravery could be measured by the willingness to act, even when fear loomed large. Each time he dodged a falling branch or outmaneuvered a treacherous burst of fire, the cub's resolve deepened. He was no longer the same innocent wanderer who had once frolicked in sunlit glades. He had transformed into a guardian of hope amid devastation. In the midst of the battle, a moment of stillness fell over a small clearing, a brief, fragile pause in the symphony of destruction. Here, as the warmth of the blaze ebbed just enough for clarity to return, Milo observed the true cost of the forest fire. The charred remains of once thriving ferns and the eerie silence of what had been a vibrant glen whispered of loss. But in the same space, flickers of life persisted, a sapling daring to sprout from the ashen ground and the cautious return of a timid rabbit. These signs of resilience spurred Milo's determination, reinforcing his belief that the forest spirit was not yet extinguished. With renewed vigor, the cub resumed his charge, his every act a silent protest against the overwhelming odds. He led more frightened creatures to safety, his small form a beacon in a landscape that had forgotten the meaning of hope. The battle against the inferno was not over, and although danger lurked in every shifting shadow, Milo's courage shone like a steady flame amidst the chaos. In that relentless struggle, the bear cub's journey reached a critical turning point where the fight for survival became a testament to the transformative power of bravery in even the most dire circumstances. As the roaring flames finally gave way to smoldering embers and the once violent inferno began to subside, a delicate silence enveloped the battered forest. In the gentle glow of an emerging dawn, the air, once thick with acrid smoke, now carried a fresh, hopeful scent of renewal. Amid the soot and charred remains, the resilient spirit of the wilderness was beginning to stir, and at its center stood Milo, the bear cub who had dared to face the blaze head-on. Milo emerged from the battle scarred yet transformed, his eyes reflecting both the sorrow of loss and the quiet triumph of survival. The chaos that had defined the previous hours was now replaced by a profound stillness as nature began its slow process of healing. Around him, the forest whispered its thanks, tender green shoots bravely pushing through the ashen floor and fragile wildflowers unfurling their petals towards the soft rays of the rising sun. These delicate signs of recovery echoed the cub's own transformation, from a frightened wanderer into a beacon of courage. In the aftermath of destruction, the forest's inhabitants gathered in a somber yet celebratory assembly. Animals that had once scattered in panic now congregated in a modest clearing beneath a mighty oak, its branches scarred but still resilient. There, the elders, a wise old deer, a venerable tortoise, and even the scarred remnants of the fierce wolf offered subtle nods of respect to Milo. Their quiet gestures spoke volumes of the reverence they held for his bravery, which had carried them through the darkest hours of the crisis. For Milo, the realization of his own inner strength was both humbling and empowering. He had learned that bravery was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to confront it head-on for the sake of those who depend on us. His heart, still pounding with the echoes of the inferno, now beat with a quiet determination, a pledge that the sacrifices made amid the roar of the fire would be honored by nurturing the renewal of their shared home. In the days that followed, as the forest steadily mended its wounds, life forged new bonds among its diverse inhabitants. The clearing beneath the oak soon became a sanctuary of shared wisdom and hope. Under its protective boughs, animals exchanged stories of survival, each narrative woven with threads of communal strength and mutual support. These gatherings were a living testament to the power of unity in adversity, a unity sparked by a bear cub's unyielding courage. Milo, though still young, found himself surrounded by mentors and peers alike, each eager to share in the journey towards healing. Nature, in its quiet majesty, had orchestrated a symphony of recovery. Gentle rains washed away the remnants of ash, and soft breezes carried the promise of new beginnings. Everywhere one looked, the scars of the inferno began to soften, making way for tender new life. In these moments, Milo understood that his trial by fire was but one chapter in the ever-changing story of the forest, a story that, at its heart, was about resilience, transformation, and the unbreakable bond between all living things. Standing in this renewed landscape, with the first warm beams of daylight illuminating his path, Milo felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. He had not only helped guide his fellow creatures to safety during the fire but had also ignited in them the enduring spark of hope. That spark, nurtured by compassion, determination, and the willingness to face even the most terrifying challenges, revealed to all the true heart of bravery. In that moment, as the forest began to whisper its song of rebirth, Milo embraced his destiny, a guardian, a symbol, and a living reminder that even in the deepest ashes, courage can kindle new life.